I still remember the exact sound, the slight creak of the floorboard that didn't belong. Having arrived home early from my conference, I moved silently through our house, planning to surprise David with lunch. Instead, I received the surprise. That unmistakable rhythmic movement, the soft moans filtering from our bedroom door, left slightly ajar, a carelessness born of assumed safety. When I peered through the crack, time compressed into a single searing moment. There was David, my husband of 11 years, and Melissa, our nanny of 3 years, tangled in our marital bed. The physical sensation wasn't what I expected. Not tears or nausea, but a strange hollowing out, as if someone had scooped everything from my chest and replaced it with ice water. My hand flew to my mouth instinctively, but I made no sound. In that crystalline moment of perfect clarity, something shifted inside me. The shock dissolved, replaced by a cold, analytical precision I'd never experienced before. I stepped back silently, my mind already cataloging details. The time, 2:17 p.m. Melissa's scheduled hours, supposedly until 5:30. The children, at school until 4. I retreated downstairs, slipped back out the front door, and drove to a coffee shop 3 miles away. There, I ordered a latte I wouldn't drink and made a decision that would change everything. I would pretend I hadn't seen anything. Yet. This discovery wouldn't just hurt him. It would cost him everything. But only if I played this perfectly. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in self-control. I returned home on schedule that evening, kissing David on the cheek as always, asking about his day while looking for microscopic tells in his expression. Melissa had already left, but I noticed the slight disarray of the throw pillows on our couch, presumably hastily rearranged after their afternoon activities had migrated downstairs. "Conference was good?" David asked, barely looking up from his laptop. "Enlightening," I replied, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. For Emma, 9, and Lucas, 7, I maintained absolute normalcy. Their stability was my primary concern, and they wouldn't become collateral damage in this implosion. I helped with homework, attended soccer practices, and read bedtime stories, all while observing David with new eyes. The signs had been there all along. The late meetings, the increased attention to his appearance, the subtle distance growing between us. Each behavioral shift now made perfect sense through this terrible new lens. On day 3, I made my first strategic move. While David showered, I ordered 3 discrete security cameras from my private Amazon account, using a credit card he didn't know about, one I'd opened years ago for emergency funds when his business temporarily struggled. The cameras arrived at my office 2 days later. Installation was calculated. One in the living room bookshelf, disguised among family photos. Another in the kitchen, hidden within a decorative clock I splurged on during a supposed shopping trip. The third, most crucial one, in the home office, positioned to capture the entryway and part of the living room. All 3 streamed to an app on my phone secured behind facial recognition. "You seem different lately," David mentioned over dinner one night, 2 weeks into my surveillance. I smiled, tilting my head slightly. "Different how? Calmer, maybe? Less stressed?" He studied me, and I recognized the look. He was checking if I suspected anything. "I've been practicing mindfulness," I lied smoothly. "From that workshop at the conference. It's helping with perspective." He nodded, satisfied with the explanation. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, mentally organizing my approach. This wasn't just about catching them anymore. It was about building an airtight case that would protect my children and secure our future without him. I approached evidence collection with the methodical precision of a prosecutor building a capital case. Every interaction was documented, every suspicious behavior noted in a password-protected file on my work computer. Financial records became my first tangible evidence. I already had access to our joint accounts, but I needed more. When David left his wallet on the counter one morning, I quickly photographed his credit cards, making note of account numbers I didn't recognize. Later, using his birth date and our anniversary, the irony wasn't lost on me, to access his online banking, I discovered a pattern. hotel charges at the Westlake Marriott, always on Tuesday afternoons when he claimed to have client meetings, dinner receipts for two at restaurants we'd never visited together, a jewelry purchase from 3 months earlier, a gift I'd never received. I printed everything, creating a chronological file that lived inside a hollowed-out legal textbook in my office at work. Digital evidence proved trickier, but ultimately more damning. When David fell asleep on the couch one Sunday afternoon, I used his thumb to unlock his phone. There were no obvious text messages, he was too careful for that, but his location history told another story. Regular visits to an address I didn't recognize, always during Melissa's supposed days off. I hit the jackpot when I found his iPad hadn't logged out of iCloud. The message backup revealed everything. Explicit texts, arrangements for their meetings, complaints about me. I forwarded selected conversations to my secure email, then carefully restored everything to its original state. The cameras provided the final, irrefutable proof. Over 3 weeks, they captured 7 encounters in our home. On the couch where our children watched movies, against the kitchen counter where I prepared family meals. I saved each video file to an encrypted drive, stomach churning as I logged dates and times. Most valuable was the audio. Their pillow talk revealed the affair had been ongoing for nearly 8 months. They'd begun planning weekends away, discussing how to transition me toward accepting more of Melissa's presence in our lives. David had even suggested bringing her on our family vacation, for the kids. My timeline now complete, I could see their relationship had escalated. Precisely when I'd been working, overtime on the Henderson project, work that had helped. Pay for the pool, David and Melissa now. Occasionally used for midnight swims. Finding Melissa's partner required careful research. Her social media offered few clues. She was circumspect online. However, our family Christmas card list provided the answer. James Reynolds, listed as Melissa's +1 for last year's neighborhood holiday party. I found him on LinkedIn, a software engineer at a downtown firm. Making contact required finesse. I couldn't risk tipping off Melissa. I created a professional pretext, suggesting a potential IT consultation for my department, and requested a coffee meeting. James arrived at the cafe looking exactly like his profile picture. Tall, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. After 10 minutes of small talk about network security, I changed course. "James, I'm not actually here about IT consulting," I said quietly. "I'm here about Melissa." His expression shifted instantly. "What about her?" "I believe she's having an affair with my husband. I have evidence, and I think you deserve to know." The color drained from his face. "I've suspected something," he admitted after a long silence. "Late nights, weekend emergencies with your family. I felt crazy for doubting her. I showed him selected text messages, enough to confirm but not humiliate." His hands trembled as he passed back my phone. "We've been together 5 years," he said, voice hollow. "We were talking about marriage." That coffee meeting forged an unexpected alliance. James had access to information I didn't. Melissa's schedule, her phone records, even bank statements from their shared account. Over the next 3 weeks, we met regularly, comparing notes and building a comprehensive picture. "She's been transferring money to a separate account," James revealed during our 4th meeting. "Almost $6,000 over the past year?" "David gave her a credit card," I countered. "For emergency expenses with the kids. She's been using it for hotel rooms." Our partnership provided something beyond evidence, validation. On days when the weight of pretending threatened to crush me, James understood exactly what I was enduring. We became each other's emotional support through the calculated facade. "How do you do it?" he asked once. "Look them in the eye every day?" "I focus on the endgame," I told him. "This isn't just about exposing them anymore. It's about securing the best possible future for my children." James nodded slowly. "I'm in. Whatever you need." They deserve consequences. Finding the right attorney required discretion. Through a colleague's recommendation, I scheduled a consultation with Patricia Winters, a family law specialist known for handling high-conflict divorces with surgical precision. Patricia's office projected exactly the confidence. I needed understated elegance, meticulous organization, and absolute privacy. After signing confidentiality agreements, I laid out everything I'd discovered. "You've been thorough," she acknowledged, reviewing my evidence files. "Most clients come to me emotionally devastated, with nothing but suspicions." "You've built half my case already. What's the other half?" I asked. "Strategy, timing, leverage." Patricia removed her glasses. "Maryland is an equitable distribution state. Infidelity doesn't automatically entitle you to more assets, but it can influence the court's perception of moral character, especially when children are involved. And when the affair is with the person hired to care for those children?" Patricia's smile was razor thin. "Precisely. That demonstrates profound judgment issues that any family court will consider relevant to custody determinations." We spent 3 hours discussing legal strategy. Patricia emphasized documentation of David's parenting lapses during the affair, missed school events, delegating his parental time to Melissa, any instance where the children's needs became secondary to his affair. "What about the videos?" I asked. "They're explicit." "We don't need to show the intimate content," she clarified. "The timestamps, locations, and the fact that these encounters occurred in the family home while he was supposed to be caring for your children. That's what matters legally." Patricia also outlined financial discovery strategies. Courts take a dim view of marital waste, assets spent on affairs. Those hotel rooms, gifts, meals, all of it potentially comes back to you in the settlement. Before I left, Patricia gave me a crucial piece of advice. "Don't confront him until we're ready to file. The element of surprise is legally advantageous. Once he knows you know, he'll start hiding assets and crafting counter-narratives." I left her office with a comprehensive legal roadmap and something even more valuable, confirmation that my methodical approach wasn't just emotional self-preservation, it was legally sound strategy. With Patricia's guidance, I began a systematic audit of our finances. David had always managed our investments and major financial decisions, while I handled day-to-day expenses, an arrangement that now seemed less like partnership and more like calculated control. I hired a forensic accountant recommended by Patricia, using funds from my private emergency account. Together, we traced every dollar through our 15-year financial history. The discoveries were illuminating. David had opened a private brokerage account 3 years earlier, funded with bonuses he'd never disclosed. Nearly $180,000 sat in investments I'd known nothing about. Additionally, he'd been overfunding his 401k, while claiming we couldn't afford to maximize mine, a disparity that had cost me approximately $85,000 in potential retirement savings. Most damning was the pattern of cash. Withdrawals, $500 here, $1,000 there, always following his client dinners. Over 8 months, these totaled nearly $22,000. When cross-referenced with the affair timeline, the correlation was undeniable. "This is what we call dissipation of marital assets," the accountant explained. "Funds used for purposes unrelated to the marriage, especially affairs, can be factored into divorce settlements." I documented everything meticulously. Each financial statement, retirement account, investment portfolio, and suspicious transaction was cataloged and added to my evidence file. I made copies of tax returns, property deeds, insurance policies, and vehicle registrations, storing them in a safe deposit box Patricia had advised me to open at a bank where David and I had no existing relationship. While conducting this financial archaeology, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. David had listed Melissa as the contingent beneficiary on a life insurance policy opened 6 months earlier, a policy I hadn't known existed. The implication was clear. They had discussed a future together, one that potentially didn't include me in any capacity. The financial audit also revealed leverage points for custody negotiations. David had been financing lavish experiences during his parenting time, expensive restaurants, theme parks, excessive gifts. creating an unsustainable expectation the court would recognize as inappropriate. Meanwhile, I documented my consistent contributions to college funds, extracurricular activities, and healthcare expenses. Financial responsibility is a component of good parenting, Patricia reminded me during our update meeting. Your records demonstrate stability and child-focused planning. His show impulsivity and self-indulgence. By the time the audit was complete, I had constructed an irrefutable financial narrative. David had systematically prioritized his own interests and his affair over his family's security, while I had maintained financial responsibility focused on our children's well-being. Melissa's dismissal required perfect timing. I chose a Friday when the children would be at my mother's for the weekend, a regular arrangement that had ironically given David and Melissa more freedom for their encounters. For weeks, I had documented legitimate performance issues, late arrivals, missed appointments for the children, incomplete household tasks. None were confronted in the moment. All were meticulously recorded for this precise scenario. I scheduled a performance review meeting, presenting it as a standard employment discussion. Melissa arrived in our kitchen looking confident, perhaps even smug. She had no reason to suspect I knew anything. "Thanks for making time for this," I began, voice perfectly professional as I opened a folder containing her employment contract and my documentation. "I've been evaluating your performance over the past few months, and there are some concerns we need to address." Her expression shifted slightly. "Concerns?" I slid a timeline across the table. "You've been late 12 times since February. Lucas missed his dental appointment because you forgot to take him. Emma's science project materials weren't purchased despite my reminder. Things have been busy," she stammered, color rising in her cheeks. "David said it wasn't a problem." "I'm the one who manages the household schedule," I reminded her calmly. "And these issues are just the beginning." For 20 minutes, I presented a clinical assessment of her failings as our children's caretaker, never once alluding to the affair. Her discomfort grew visibly, perhaps wondering if this was leading to a confrontation about David. "Given these ongoing issues," I concluded, "I've decided it's best to terminate your employment." Effective immediately, the shock on her face was genuine. In her arrogance, she had assumed her relationship with David made her untouchable. "You can't," she began, then stopped herself. "Have you discussed this with David?" "My husband and I make household staffing decisions together," I lied smoothly. "Your final pay has been calculated, including 2 weeks' severance." I slid an envelope across the table. "Please leave your house key." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse, extracting our house key from her keychain. As she placed it on the table, her expression hardened. "This is a mistake," she said quietly. "David won't be happy." "David understands that our children's care comes first," I responded, maintaining steady eye contact. "You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. I'll be present while you do so." The calculated humiliation of having me supervise her departure was not lost on her. As she gathered her things from the guest room where she occasionally stayed overnight, her movements were jerky with suppressed rage. At the front door, she turned, seemingly ready to reveal everything. I simply smiled, the kind of smile that conveyed I knew far more than she realized. "Goodbye, Melissa." As her car pulled away, I texted James, "It's done." "She's been terminated," his response came seconds later. "My locks are already changed. Her things are packed. Thank you for your strength." David's call came exactly 37 minutes after Melissa left our house. "What the hell, Caroline?" he demanded without preamble. "Melissa just called me in tears." "You fired her?" Without discussing it with me, I had prepared for this moment, rehearsing my response to maintain the facade just a little longer. "I've been documenting performance issues for months, David," I replied calmly. "I mentioned them to you twice, but you said you trusted my judgment on household matters." He faltered. "You should have had a final conversation with me before making this decision. Like the conversation you didn't have with me before giving her access to our credit card?" I asked, introducing the first hint that I knew more than he thought. Silence stretched between us. "What are you talking about?" "The visa statement came today," I said, the lie flowing easily. "There are some interesting charges we should discuss when you get home." David arrived 20 minutes later, the fastest he'd made it home from work in months. His expression was a careful mask of controlled concern, but I could see the panic. "Underneath, show me the statement," he demanded immediately. Handed him a credit card statement where I'd highlighted several restaurant charges and a hotel billing from the previous month. Nothing that explicitly proved the affair, but enough to make him nervous. "These are work expenses," he said dismissively. "I must have used the wrong card." I murmured noncommittally. "And Melissa's name on the room service bill?" "Another mistake?" The color drained from his face. "Let me explain." "Not necessary right now," I interrupted smoothly. "The children will be home from my mother's tomorrow afternoon. We should focus on finding a temporary childcare solution since you've been saying how busy work is lately." The following weeks were a fascinating study in psychological warfare. David began coming home early, bringing flowers, suggesting family outings. He checked his phone surreptitiously but less frequently, clearly communicating with Melissa more cautiously now. I watched him search the house when he thought I wasn't looking, checking for signs I'd discovered their secrets. He became increasingly agitated when he couldn't account for my whereabouts, calling repeatedly when I was at yoga classes that were actually meetings with Patricia or James. "We should go away together," he suggested 3 weeks after Melissa's departure. "Just the two of us, reconnect." "That sounds lovely," I agreed. "But with the children's schedules and your busy work calendar, perhaps we should plan for next month." Each deflection increased his anxiety. I observed him making hurried phone calls from his car, shredding documents in his home office, checking our joint accounts more frequently. Classic signs of a man trying to cover his tracks retroactively. The facade was becoming harder to maintain as the legal preparations neared completion, but watching David's mounting desperation provided a cold satisfaction that strengthened my resolve. His frantic attempts to determine how much I knew only confirmed that Patricia's advice about maintaining the element of surprise had been absolutely correct. Throughout this calculated chess game, Emma and Lucas remained my primary concern. Their well-being would not be sacrificed in the process of exposing their father's betrayal. With Patricia's guidance, I developed a comprehensive custody strategy focused on minimizing trauma during the transition. I scheduled sessions with a child psychologist specializing in divorce, initially presented to David as general wellness checks, given the changes in our household routine. "Children often internalize family tension," I explained when he questioned the appointments. "Dr. Brennan can help them process their feelings about Melissa leaving so suddenly." The psychologist became an invaluable resource, providing documentation of the children's emotional states and developmental needs that would later support our custody arrangement. More importantly, she helped me prepare age-appropriate explanations for the impending separation. For the inevitable fallout, I secured temporary living arrangements with my sister Jennifer, who lived 40 minutes away, close enough to maintain the children's school routine but far enough to create a buffer from immediate confrontations with David. Aunt Jen's having some work done on her house. I told the children during dinner one evening. We might have a sleepover there soon to help her out. Wouldn't that be fun? Lucas was enthusiastic about seeing his cousins. Emma, more perceptive at 9, studied my face carefully but didn't question the transparent pretext. Simultaneously, I documented every parenting failure of David's during this period: missed parent-teacher conferences, forgotten soccer practices, the time he'd been unreachable for 3 hours when Lucas spiked a fever at school. Each incident strengthened our case for primary custody. Most damning was his behavior since Melissa's departure. Without her as a buffer, his impatience with the children became more pronounced. He snapped at Emma for interrupting his work calls, complained about driving Lucas to play dates, and repeatedly suggested I cancel their extracurricular activities because they were too much hassle. I captured these moments discreetly, a journal entry with date and time, occasional voice recordings of his outbursts when the children weren't present, text messages where he declined parenting responsibilities. The narrative emerging was clear. David had outsourced his parenting to Melissa, and without her, he viewed his own children as inconvenient obstacles. A week before filing the divorce petition, I met with the children's teachers, school counselor, and pediatrician, explaining that we were going through some family changes. These conversations established support systems and created witnesses to my proactive concern for the children's stability. Witnesses who might later confirm my parental dedication if custody became contested. That same week, I carefully packed overnight bags that were actually carefully curated essential items, favorite stuffed animals, comfort blankets, needed medications, irreplaceable photographs. These bags, stored in my car trunk under the guise of emergency preparedness, would ensure the children had their most important possessions when we temporarily relocated to Jennifer's. "Mom, are you and Dad fighting?" Emma asked one night as I tucked her in. I stroked her hair, careful to be honest without burdening her with adult complexities. "Your dad and I are having some grown-up problems right now. But I want you to know that we both love you and Lucas very much, and nothing about that will ever change. Is that why you seem sad sometimes?" "Sometimes adults get sad when they're solving big problems," I acknowledged. "But I'm working on making things better for all of us," she nodded solemnly. "I hope Melissa doesn't come back. Dad was nicer before she worked here." I froze momentarily, wondering what she might have observed. "Did something happen with Melissa that made you uncomfortable?" "She and Dad whispered a lot, and sometimes she'd be here in the morning before you got up, even though she wasn't supposed to work until later." Emma's perception confirmed my decision was right. It made the house feel weird. I hugged her tightly, more certain than ever that my calculated approach wasn't just about justice. It was about protecting my children from the corrosive dishonesty that had infiltrated our home. After nearly 3 months of evidence gathering, financial auditing, and strategic preparation, Patricia and I finalized the divorce petition. The document ran to 73 pages, a comprehensive accounting of David's infidelity, financial deceptions, and parenting deficiencies. "This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've handled," Patricia noted as we reviewed the final draft. "The petition requests primary physical custody, child support according to state guidelines, and equitable distribution of assets accounting for his dissipation of marital funds. Most critically, we included a temporary restraining order preventing David from accessing or transferring funds from our joint accounts once served, a protection against the financial retaliation Patricia anticipated." "When do we file?" I asked, my heart racing despite months of preparation. "Tomorrow morning," Patricia replied. "My office will handle the filing, and our process server will deliver the papers to David's office at approximately 2 p.m. The timing was deliberate, shortly before an important client meeting Patricia had discovered through industry connections. The public embarrassment would maximize David's psychological disadvantage from the outset. That evening, I maintained perfect normalcy at home, helping with homework and preparing David's favorite meal. When he commented on my good mood, I mentioned a potential promotion at work, another calculated misdirection to keep him complacent until service was complete. The next day passed in a surreal haze. I received Patricia's text at 2:17 p.m., papers served. Proceed as planned. I left work immediately, collected the children from school, and drove directly to Jennifer's house, the first step in our carefully choreographed exit strategy. The overnight bags were already in the trunk. Essential documents were safely stored off-site. Everything was in place. "We're having that sleepover at Aunt Jen's tonight," I explained to Emma and Lucas as we drove. "Won't that be fun?" Jennifer was waiting when we arrived, her warm smile betraying none of the legal drama unfolding. The children raced inside to find their cousins while I quickly briefed her on the day's developments. "He's been calling non-stop for the past 20 minutes. I showed her my phone with its 17 missed calls. "It's happening exactly as Patricia predicted. You're doing the right thing, Caroline." Jennifer squeezed my hand. I've set up the guest rooms. Stay as long as you need. David's text messages escalated from confusion to anger to desperate negotiation. Where are you? Call me immediately. You can't do this. We need to talk. Please, let's discuss this before it goes too far. At least tell me where the kids are. I'll give you anything you want. Just call me. Following Patricia's instructions, I responded with a single text. The children are safe. All communication should go through my attorney, Patricia Winters. Her contact information is in the papers you received today. Then I turned off my phone, gathered my children close, and allowed myself the first genuine moment of peace since walking in on David and Melissa nearly 4 months earlier. David found us at Jennifer's house the next morning. I had anticipated this. It was why we'd chosen her home rather than a hotel or rental property that would be harder to trace. He pounded on the door at 7:30 a.m., voice carrying through the neighborhood. Caroline! I know you're in there! Open the door! Jennifer's husband, Michael, met him on the porch, cell phone visibly recording the encounter. David, you need to leave. Caroline has made it clear all communication should go through her attorney. These are my children. David's voice broke with what might have been genuine emotion or calculated performance. I have a right to see them. Your visitation rights are outlined in the temporary custody order, Michael replied calmly. Patricia Winters' office can arrange the scheduled visits. I watched from the window, children still asleep upstairs, as David's control visibly crumbled. The man who had maintained such careful deception for months was now exposed, not just as an unfaithful husband, but as someone whose entire life was unraveling in real time. Just let me talk to her, he pleaded. 5 minutes. I made a decision then, one not in our original plan but necessary for my own closure. I stepped onto the porch, keeping Michael beside me. 5 minutes, I agreed. Michael stays. David's appearance shocked me. Unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, still wearing yesterday's suit. Caroline, what is this? 73 pages of accusations? Secret cameras? You've been planning this for months while pretending everything was normal? Yes, I answered simply. I learned from the best. I made a mistake, he insisted. A terrible mistake. But this calculated attack was exactly what you deserved, I finished for him. You brought another woman into our home, the person we trusted with our children. You exposed Emma and Lucas to your affair. You risked their stability and security. I never meant... You listed Melissa as your life insurance beneficiary, I cut him off. You discussed taking her on our family vacation. This wasn't a mistake, David. It was a systematic betrayal of everything our family stood for. His face paled. How do you know that? I know everything, I replied calmly. The hotels, the restaurants, the secret account with $180,000 you never disclosed. I know about the cash withdrawals, the credit card you gave her, the joint account you opened at First National. Each revelation landed like a physical blow. His eyes darted as he mentally calculated how I could have discovered these details. What else I might know? The children need both parents, he tried a different approach. This scorched earth strategy only hurts them. The children need stability and honesty, I corrected. Something you sacrificed for an affair with their caregiver. The psychological implications of that choice are documented in the filing. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. We can work this out privately. Whatever you want. The house, more support, full custody, just withdraw the filing. We don't need lawyers. Actually, we do, I replied. Your 5 minutes are up, David. My attorney will contact yours to arrange your first visitation with the children. As I turned to go inside, he grabbed my arm, not harshly, but desperately. Don't do this, Caroline. 15 years together has to count for something. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. It counted for something, I agreed. Just not enough for you to remain faithful or honest. Michael stepped between us, and David finally backed away, shoulders slumped in defeat. As I closed the door, I glimpsed what appeared to be genuine tears on his face. Whether for his lost family or simply for his shattered self-image, I couldn't tell. Later that day, Patricia called with an update. David's attorney contacted me. They want to discuss settlement options. So soon? I was surprised by the rapid capitulation. He's desperate, Patricia explained. The evidence is overwhelming and the public filing threatens his professional reputation. They're looking for damage control. What are they offering? Full physical custody with generous visitation, child support at 20% above guidelines, and the family home. They want to avoid court entirely. I considered this offer better than we'd expected, so quickly but remembered Patricia's earlier advice about negotiating from strength. Then we'll consider their proposal, I instructed. After full financial disclosure and a forensic accounting of all accounts opened in the last 5 years. The message was clear. There would be no quick resolution, no easy escape from the consequences of David's choices. Like the affair itself, the dissolution of our marriage would unfold methodically, with calculated precision and on my terms. Despite initial settlement talks, David's cooperation deteriorated as the reality of his situation sank in. His attorney began challenging custody arrangements, disputing financial disclosures, and attempting to exclude evidence of the affair as irrelevant to parenting capacity. This is actually good news, Patricia assured me during a strategy session. His aggressive stance gives us justification to present our full case in court. Our court strategy centered on 3 key narratives: David's betrayal of family trust by conducting an affair with the children's caregiver, his systematic financial deceptions, and the demonstrable contrast between our respective approaches to parenting. The first court appearance, a temporary orders hearing, provided a glimpse of the judicial perspective. Judge Harmon, a seasoned family court judge known for her child-centered rulings, showed visible disapproval when Patricia outlined the basic facts of the affair. Let me understand correctly, Judge Harmon interrupted. The respondent conducted an inappropriate relationship with the children's nanny while she was actively employed in the home? Yes, Your Honor, Patricia confirmed, often during hours when she was being paid to care for the children. David's attorney attempted to minimize this fact. My client acknowledges a lapse in judgment, but maintains this personal matter has no bearing on his parenting capabilities. Judge Harmon's expression hardened. Counsel, when a parent engages in deceptive behavior with an individual entrusted with childcare duties, it absolutely raises questions about judgment and moral fitness. This court takes such matters very seriously. That initial hearing resulted in a temporary order largely mirroring our requests. Primary custody remained with me, supervised visitation for David, and continuation of the financial restraints preventing asset dissipation. As we prepared for the final hearing, Patricia orchestrated a devastating sequence of testimony. James Reynolds would testify to Melissa's admissions about the affair. Our forensic accountant would detail David's financial concealment. The children's therapist would explain the impact of disrupted attachment when a caregiver's role becomes compromised by adult relationships. Most powerful was the evidence I'd methodically gathered. The video footage showing David and Melissa in intimate situations in our family spaces. Text messages revealing their discussions about my eventual removal from the family structure. Financial records documenting how family resources had been diverted to support their relationship. David's legal team made a critical error by attempting to paint me as calculating and vindictive, inadvertently highlighting the careful, child-centered approach documented throughout my evidence. Mrs. Walker's methodical evidence gathering demonstrates extraordinary restraint and foresight, Patricia argued during the final hearing. Rather than reacting emotionally in a way that might have traumatized the children, she prioritized their stability while documenting behaviors relevant to their best interests. Judge Harmon nodded thoughtfully. The court does note the contrast between impulsive choices on one side and deliberate protection of the children's welfare on the other. The most powerful moment came, unexpectedly through David's own testimony. Under Patricia's cross-examination, he admitted he'd been unable to manage basic childcare duties after Melissa's termination. And why was that difficult for you? Patricia pressed. I have demanding work responsibilities, David replied defensively. Yet Mrs. Walker maintained both professional responsibilities and childcare duties throughout this period. Correct? She's their mother, he said dismissively, a statement that visibly impacted Judge Harmon, whose notes became more vigorous. By the hearing's conclusion, David's position had weakened substantially. His attorney approached Patricia during a recess, renewing settlement discussions with terms even more favorable than their initial offer. They're proposing primary physical custody to you, standard visitation to David, child support at guidelines plus college expenses, the family home with no offset, and a 65-35 division of marital assets in your favor, Patricia summarized. And the secret accounts? I asked. Full disclosure with penalties for any assets not previously revealed. The settlement represented everything we'd sought, perhaps even more, without the continued stress of prolonged litigation. After consulting with Patricia about potential risks of proceeding versus benefits of immediate resolution, I made my decision. I'll accept the settlement, I told her, provided there's a morality clause preventing overnight guests during his parenting time for at least 2 years. Patricia smiled slightly. They won't like that, but given the circumstances and Judge Harmon's clear position, they'll likely concede. 2 days later, we returned to court with a comprehensive settlement agreement. Judge Harmon reviewed the terms carefully before addressing us directly. While the court appreciates the parties reaching agreement without further litigation, I want to be clear that these terms appear appropriate given the evidence presented. Mr. Walker's conduct demonstrated significant lapses in judgment that directly impacted family stability. She turned to me. Mrs. Walker, the court commends your focus on the children's well-being throughout what must have been an extraordinarily painful process. Then to David. Mr. Walker, I strongly encourage you to reflect on the choices that led to this outcome and prioritize rebuilding trust with your children during your parenting time. With a final stroke of her pen, Judge Harmon approved the settlement, legally ending 15 years of marriage and beginning a new chapter defined by my strategic choices rather than David's betrayal. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sat in our family home, now legally mine alone, reviewing paperwork for Emma's school enrollment. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if the months of deception had created a heaviness only noticeable once it was gone. The transition hadn't been simple. Emma and Lucas initially struggled with the new arrangement, particularly the supervised visitations with David. The children's therapist had been invaluable, helping them process complex emotions while maintaining appropriate boundaries. David had followed the court order scrupulously, perhaps understanding he had no further margin for error. Our communication remained strictly limited to childcare logistics, conducted primarily through a co-parenting app that documented all exchanges. He had recently requested a review of the supervision requirement, which I was considering with the children's therapist's input. Melissa had disappeared completely from our lives, moving to Seattle according to James, who had since become a friend. He had found his own path forward, dating cautiously and focusing on professional growth. Our alliance, forged in mutual betrayal, had evolved into a supportive friendship neither of us had expected. Financially, the settlement had provided security beyond what I'd imagined possible. The discovery process had uncovered additional assets David had concealed, resulting in further adjustments to the division. The children's college funds were now under my sole control, with court-ordered contributions from David ensuring their education remained protected. My professional life had flourished in unexpected ways. The organizational skills honed during those months of strategic planning translated into a promotion I might otherwise have missed while distracted by a failing marriage. The clarity that emerged from removing David's influence had helped me recognize opportunities previously overlooked. Most significantly, my relationship with Emma and Lucas had deepened. Without the constant tension of maintaining appearances, our home had become genuinely peaceful. We developed new traditions: Friday movie nights, Sunday morning hikes, impromptu kitchen dance parties that belonged exclusively to our reconfigured family unit. "Mom?" Lucas appeared in the doorway of my home office. "Can we have pizza tonight?" I smiled at my son, his expression so earnest over such a simple request. Absolutely. Want to help me make the dough? As we worked together in the kitchen, Lucas measuring flour with exaggerated precision, Emma joining us to chop vegetables, I felt a profound satisfaction that had nothing to do with winning or losing a marital battle. This was the victory that mattered. My children, secure and thriving in a home built on honesty. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine, contemplating the path that had brought me here. The methodical dismantling of my marriage had required a version of myself I hadn't known existed, someone calculating, patient, and unflinchingly strategic. Those qualities, initially born of necessity, had become strengths I now carried forward deliberately. The affair that might have destroyed me had instead revealed my capacity for strategic thinking over emotional reaction. In choosing the long game over immediate confrontation, I'd secured not just legal and financial advantages, but the opportunity to rebuild on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Dinner next Saturday? The kids miss their cousins." I smiled, typing back, "We'd love to. I'll bring dessert." The betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined it. What defined me now was the calculated precision with which I'd reclaimed control of my life, and the peaceful family dinner I'd enjoy tomorrow, secure in the knowledge that I'd protected what mattered most.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.